So today, my guest is Paul Grainger. Paul describes himself as a deep thinker, an espresso drinker, and an entrepreneur. He is a student and a student ambassador at Torrens University, where I work as a disability advisor, and an ambassador for Beyond Blue, an Australian charity that focuses on education to help people understand anxiety and depression and prevent suicide. Paul, thank you so much for being in the show today.
No, thank you for the invitation.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So when I first heard your story, you and we shared the stage, and you shared your challenges managing your well-being during this period where you started to study. And I was so impressed by your vulnerability. That's one of the things I thought. It was healing and empowering at the same time. Seeing a bloke open up and talk openly about challenges, it's so refreshing, and it's so new that I thought, that was amazing. So I wanted to know more about you, because I know that was just a little snippet of your story. So can you tell us a little bit more about some of the key moments in your life so far, because I'm sure there will be so many more, and the turnaround moments, even before university? And if you want to tell us a little bit more about how uni fits with everything, I'm sure I'm going to have more questions for you. So go ahead.
Yeah. So there's been many key moments, I think, in the last 10 years for me, and it has been 10 years now since, let's say that first big turnaround moment. Now the context of that moment, which pretty much set up everything that was to come, would have been when I was about 17, so 10 years ago exactly. And the context of that was we had a number of family deaths in quick succession. I was finishing year 11 and 12 at school. Obviously, a lot of the pressures being a teenager and trying to fit in, and you have self-esteem issues that you have at that time. And certainly for me, I had acne, and the self-esteem was, probably at an all-time low. And I remember coming into year 12, scrambling to get every possible Clearasil, pimple treatment cream available, just so I could get back to school, because, that was the reality. So it's, you're dealing with the stress at home, you're dealing with the stress at school, and you're dealing with the pressure of friends and the peers. So there was all of these things, different things to contend with. And I guess it was the perfect storm brewing for, how exactly was I going to get through this period? And unfortunately, I didn't feel at the time that I could get through school. And as is often the case when we're faced with these really difficult situations, the tendency is to try and escape from reality and very much go into our own shell. And that's kind of what I ended up doing. And there were periods of, weeks where I couldn't find the energy or the motivation to go to school. And, at this point, it was just mum and I living at home. My brother and sister had, moved out now, and my mum and dad had separated for a short period. And, it was just kind of this pressure cooker situation. And unfortunately, that meant that a few months before I was due to graduate from year 12, I dropped out. And, that was, looking back, it would have been great if I could have just made those last 3 months and finished school and just at least tick that box, and it would have made maybe a few things easier. But at the time, it just felt like the whole world was crashing down around me, and I felt very numb to reality. So then the next year after that, there were periods of many, many months at a time where I felt like I couldn't leave my bedroom. Was feeling very, very anxious all the time, very, very depressed. And it would have been about 9 months after that that I began having suicidal thoughts for the first time. And when you have these thoughts for the first time, it's terrifying, because you never think that these moments are going to come. And I remember very clearly that night when this happened, and I started creating a bit of a plan, and that was just like a whoa, like what's going on here? Um, and that just kind of really shocked me. And I remember just laying in bed in tears, you know, grappling with what I was thinking. And I guess that's when something really just shifted in me. It was kind of like, whoa, like I like how has it gotten to this point? Um, and then it was in that moment actually that I realized that I needed to give purpose to this pain somehow. Um, and to do that, my first thought was to film a YouTube video and to maybe start sharing my story with whoever wanted to listen. So that's actually what I did. The next morning, I would have been, I don't know, 3, 4 in the morning. I got my webcam on my laptop and filmed about a 10-minute video just sharing how I was feeling, and, you know, what I wanted to do with my message to try and help others. So I was 17, but that was the first moment where I really, you know, I had this feeling deep within that I had to use this pain and to give it purpose somehow. And that's what I've tried to do ever since.
Amazing. So when you posted that the video, what did that mean to you, like internally? I know your aim was to help people, but also what was like how are you processing that, and what did that do to you? Just that sharing with others your pain, not just the for the purpose of helping, but for the purpose of sharing.
Yeah. Well, I think it really it just gave things meaning, because I think that's what I was lacking. So like, you know, when you're feeling so depressed, it doesn't feel like anything has any meaning, and that everything's kind of pointless. And that's why maybe finding motivation to do anything is so difficult, because, you know, what's the point of doing that? Like, it doesn't mean anything. And it's just, you know, so I think in that moment for me, it just kind of gave myself a sense of meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess being able to share, it just kind of took a lot of pressure off myself, because I think up until that moment, I was trying to deal with it all on my own. And in that moment, maybe it was the act of saying, you know, I can't deal with this on my own. I'm going to tell other people and then create this community where we can help each other. So there was definitely that part of it as well. And then, you know, it wasn't just this video, obviously. Then it was like, okay, let's go and get some other help, and let's start setting some better habits for myself. You know, and that's when my parents got involved a little bit more. That's when friends got involved. That's when I saw the GP and kind of set those things in motion. You know, it's when I started riding my bike more. I started getting into cycling a lot more. So there are a lot of things after that. But I think that first step of just giving what I was feeling meaning and taking the burden off my own shoulders and sharing it with people, that really helped a lot.
Is that how you have become an ambassador for Beyond Blue? Is that how it started?
So it's interesting. So the link between that moment and Beyond Blue would have been about 3 years. So I think I was 20 when I became an ambassador. And in those 3 years, you know, that commitment to you know, giving purpose to that pain hadn't wavered. So you know, I started blogging, and I was writing about things, and I was journaling, and I filmed a few other YouTube videos on how to overcome anxiety. So there was this thread of you know, sharing through those few years. But in that time, I'd actually also moved to England. So I set out with the goal of creating a driver academy for young racing car drivers in England.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, things had gotten to a pretty stable point by the time I was 19. There were ups and downs, but at 19, I'd been in the same job for about a year. had a stable group of friends, felt kind of purposeful, and I hadn't really had any major episodes. So of course, when you're in that place and you think you've recovered, it was like, oh, great. So let's move to the other side of the world now and, try and create a multi-million-dollar business. And what I'd neglected in that was I was moving to the other side of the world, and now I was giving up all of those things that were keeping me healthy. So the stability, the routine, the daily habits, the friends, that sense of, purpose somewhat in the job that I was doing, all of that had gone. And now I was living in a farmhouse in Cambridgeshire in England with 2 other people. And it was like, okay, so now I've got to not only build the business that I wanted to create, but also set up all of those habits and that routine again. And that's what I didn't do. So I think I chewed through all the savings that I had in about 4 months, and then, it was back to the same point again of asking myself those questions, like, what is the point of this? And there were some very important meetings that I didn't go to because I just couldn't get out of bed, and I would just hide under the sheets and think, I've just, completely messed this up. So, recovery isn't, this linear trajectory from those turnaround moments. There are very much those ups and downs, and, there were maybe 9 months or so in England after that point where I ran out of money, where it was, trying to pay rent was a hard one, and, homeless for a little bit there, trying to figure things out, and back to seeing psychologists and wandering around trying to get to appointments.
In England?
In England still, yeah. Which was a very, very lonely time, because now obviously being so far away from family, it just compounds the issue. So it was a tough time. And, when I finally did get out of that, and in the end, my dad just bought me a plane ticket back, when I was honest with them again and said, this is actually the situation that I'm in. I came back and spent some time reflecting on what had happened, and I identified some of those lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where it was like, no, I need to get back to what I was doing and get back to that purposeful life again. And that's, then I started with Beyond Blue about 6 months after that. And I really wanted to talk to people about the importance of those pillars of wellness that we can't ever neglect.
Mm-hmm. And belonging was one that you mentioned. That's pretty big one, right? You had a place and a group to belong, so that belonging, it was part of your purpose as well.
Yep.
And that was completely gone the moment you left. So
Yep.
tell us a little bit more about the 4 pillars that you mentioned. Well,
for me, I know there's a few different little acronyms for pillars of mental wellness, but for me, it's really about that social connection and that community, because that was like, when I go back to when I left for England at 19, that was something that was the first time I'd ever had that in my life. So all through school, I was very much I had 2 or 3 close friends, but I certainly wasn't, in the popular groups or socializing with everyone. Everyone, got along with me and I got along with them, but I was just, that introvert who had his close friends. So, when I left for England, that was the first time ever that I'd have had a group of friends who I felt connected to and had shared interests with. And, I realized through letting that go just how important that was. So, now it's, for me, investing in those relationships with people, making sure I'm calling them or texting them, or, it's harder now, I think, to I guess, make the effort to set up a video call or whatever. So, but by whatever means we can keep in touch with our friends, I think is really, really important for me. The second pillar that's really been transformative for me is exercise and getting to the gym or doing something for our physical health. And I worked in the fitness industry for a few years as well. And for self-esteem, self-confidence, and also just the investment into doing something positive for yourself, I think, is a really good habit to cultivate. So just knowing that you're in the gym doing something that is bettering yourself for the future, I think the more we start doing little things like that, that has a snowball effect just in it on its own. So, that's been really powerful for me. And then the third thing is just, starting to educate myself and to read and give myself things about the future to be excited for as well. That's been really cool. And I think that might segue into your next question.
Yeah, and I was just say that those 4 things that you mentioned are the 4 things that I mentioned in my book, Road to Recovery, as well. So to me, exercise, for example, was a really big one as well. But I'm not. This is not about my book. This is about you. So my next question is: what would you say have encouraged you to start studying again, and what are the key lessons that you learned going back to studies?
Study for me was an opportunity to slow down, I think. So I actually had a manager at work once tell me that I was like a caged lion just wanting to attack everything. And through my whole life, that seemed to be the theme. And when he said that, it just resonated so strongly, because when I look back over my life, I was always so impatient. And as that, young entrepreneur, I had my first business when I was 11 years old. It was like, okay, I'm going to build something, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to own a Ferrari when I'm 20, and I'm going to, conquer the world, and I'm going to retire when I'm 30. And I'm just like all these big visions for my life. And I was just always in a hurry. And, that example of moving to England and trying to create this academy that realistically was going to cost, hundreds of thousands of pounds at the minimum. And I was very naive, and I thought that my 10,000 Australian dollars of savings was going to be enough, and with no experience, mind you, of anything related to this. And I think I really did need to learn a lot the hard way about business and about, what are the steps we need to take in order to succeed. And, rushing isn't one of those steps that we should take. We really need to slow down, to be strategic, to invest in the right relationships, to have the knowledge bank behind us. Otherwise, we're just
risk management.
Exactly. And I had so much, maybe too much belief in myself, to a point that it was like I'd have all this belief, and then it just wouldn't work, and then I'd have no belief, and it was this toying between too much and none. Mm-hmm. And there had to be a balance between those two. And at 23, it was getting to the point where I hadn't finished school. I'd certainly failed at a lot more than I'd succeeded at. And, I was going to be that mature age student now if ever I did study. And it was just another, I guess, turning point in my life where it's like, okay, if I'm ever going to do this, I'm going to have to kind of do it now. And I'd just been let go from a job and under bad circumstances. And it was just kind of like, geez. So I had another crisis moment at 23 where I actually ended up in hospital feeling suicidal again. And, just kind of all of these different things happening. And it's like, if it's now or never, and it's that pressure. And it's like, no. And I came out of hospital and just thought, no, okay, now is the time just to stop, slow down, give myself a foundation, take some time out, can keep investing in those pillars that we talked about. And then soon after that is when I started studying, to give myself that foundation and just give myself a few years to figure things out without needing to, do it all yesterday, so to speak.
Yeah, it's so important to slow down. I mean, life and success is really a journey, right? It's not, it doesn't have to all happen at the speed of light. It can also be something that you savor, like little moments in your way to that. So I guess it, just slow it all back down and then start again. So I know you started with the diploma, is that right? So you started with the diploma, and then when you completed your diploma, you then went into the bachelor.
Yeah, and I wanted to do that. One, I think that I didn't actually apply for the bachelor. I'm not actually sure if I could have gotten into that. And Torrens offered the opportunity to do the diploma, and then if I did well enough in that, then I could do the bachelor. But really, I just wanted to do the diploma initially to prove to myself that I could finish something, that I could succeed in education. And obviously there were some challenges at the beginning, but we got through those. And one of my proudest moments through all of my university studies was getting my overall grades back at the end of the first trimester and getting 2 distinctions. And that was just this light bulb moment of like, crap, like I can succeed in this.
Yeah, and you had moments where you couldn't press the submit, as you shared, and I know that many students have that. And that self-doubt, is this good enough? Am I good enough? Isn't that something that is in everyone's mind to some degree? But
in life, we don't really know, like, what is the measure of success in life? Like, it's so subjective. Success to one person is completely different to what success is to someone else. But often the image of success that's portrayed in the media is, the people who are millionaires and have these big houses and fancy cars, and they're on TV, or they're celebrities of some kind. It's like that image of success doesn't need to be what success is for us. It's like success for us can simply be, submitting those assessments when you really didn't think that you were capable of doing that. And as you say, like every time, even now, like I'm submitting my last assessment in my degree on Sunday, which is, I never thought this day would come, and it's come, but still to this day, I have those moments where I'm hitting submit and I'm like, oh, I don't know about this, like whatever, but it's, it's going through that process and giving yourself the opportunity to prove that you are capable.
I'll share this with you because this podcast I've been talking about doing this podcast for a long time. And one of the things I share in my book is this idea of integrity, of wholeness, that integrity equals wholeness. And that every time that we leave a little piece of us behind because we didn't believe in ourselves, or we didn't do what we thought we wanted to do, or we dream about, it's sort of like as if you kind of taking a little piece of you, so that integrity is not how you behave towards others so much, but it's also how you behave towards yourself. So by every time that you submit that button, every time you do something that you want to do, you follow through with your commitment towards yourself. It's a win, right? So and I always say we miss 100% of the shots that we don't take. 100%. And that's something I say to my coaches a lot, and it's true because I had a job in the past that if I had not applied for the job, I wouldn't have taken the job, but I was successful with my application and I was so thrilled. And the fact that you even believe that you can do it, and then you go and do it, it doesn't matter. The worst case scenario, you don't get it, or you get feedback is really important for our growth as well. Right? So one question to you, did you stop to evaluate what success is for you? Because obviously you, from going to England with 10K and wanting to build a business that was probably cost 10 times more, if not more, to being really clear on what matters and what success is for you. So obviously you had some time to reflect on what success is for you now. How is that looking like for you right now?
That's a really interesting question. I don't think I've formulated yet exactly what success is for me. I think that's still a work in progress. But I would say when I've felt most successful is when I've been really connected with that feeling of purpose. And for me, that feeling of purpose is when I'm using my story and sharing my story with others to create some kind of positive impact in others' lives. So one thing my success coach at Torrens said to me recently, which was, another light bulb moment, one of many. It was, I've always been so focused on having a positive impact in the world. And it's like impact, impact, impact. Like, how am I going to create this impact that I want? And she reframed that by kind of saying, don't worry so much about the impact. Focus on your value. And when you focus on your value and you give your value to the world each day, the impact will happen on its own. And that was like, whoa, okay, so what makes me valuable? What do I have of value that I can give to the world? And whenever I'm giving that value to the world, that's when I feel successful. So I think for me now, about to graduate and about to, get started with my life, let's say, so long as I can be doing that, I think success will logically follow.
So you obviously enjoyed your course, and you have now a new role at Torrens as a student ambassador. How is that going? And I'm sure this is something that a lot of students will benefit from having you as a role model and as someone who can, as a peer mentor in their journey. So how's that going?
It's been really interesting. I've had the opportunity so far to speak to a number of students who, as we can imagine at this point in time, are doing it pretty tough. So we've had people who have lost their jobs, maybe their partner's lost their job and there's, a new dynamic in the house, and trying to figure things out and just trying to make ends meet. And at the same time, they've still got to stay on top of their studies, which for a lot of them have suddenly shifted from the face-to-face classroom environment that they rely on, and now they're having to do that on their own at home through online learning. So I guess for me, as someone who studied online for 3.5 years, there's a really good opportunity for me there to, share my experiences as an online student and some of the things that worked for me, when I was also dealing with a lot of things in my life, working full time, still on that recovery journey myself. So I think, again, it's kind of giving purpose to, some of the things that I take for granted. Like, I wouldn't necessarily have thought, like, as an online student, I've got this great value that I can offer other students. And, it's only been through this very unique situation in the world that suddenly online students is every student. So suddenly I'm very valuable in the expertise that I can bring. So it's a really interesting role, and I hope to continue using my role as a mentor to encourage students, to inspire students, to share with them some habits for success in their studies. And then ultimately, I think my future will be in how do we maybe transform the education system and give students and young people the best chance for the future when the world out there is changing so quickly.
That's a really good. This is a really important area for change, I think, because I think that education needs to be relevant as well. And what I'm seeing here in my home is that I'm teaching my children to to self-teach and to learn things that will be valuable down the track for them, that maybe not now, but that learning agility that I think probably online students do more than on campus students. So when you have to go after things on your own, you don't have your peers sitting next to you having a coffee where you can have that exchange. So you kind of learn the hard way. Plus, you need to have the habits, to the self-management habits, to be able to stay on top of your study load and watch your classes, and whilst everything else is happening. So I guess your experience with your recovery journey and studying online, all of those things, even the homeless period of your life, everything will sort of come now as so much value to the students that you are helping. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, question. What are some of the key learnings like that you can share with someone who is struggling right now to turn things around, who is feeling like maybe they're feeling purposeless and they don't know what's next? And what are your words of wisdom?
My words of wisdom. I think, for me, it's the thing that's helped the most is what I mentioned earlier. So taking some of that pressure and expectation off and just kind of slowing down. I think when we're feeling so under the pump to figure things out, we won't be able to figure things out. There's just too much pressure. We've put too much pressure on ourselves and on an outcome that we're hoping to achieve that I think that's kind of blinding in a certain sense. I think it's just slowing down and starting to do the simple things right, and then you'll be able to, start to see, oh, well, if I'm connecting with friends and I'm exercising and I'm eating right and I'm sleeping well, it's like all of those foundational things, then you'll start to see opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise have seen because you're feeling, that sense of purposelessness, or you're feeling alone, or you're feeling tired and you just want to sleep. So it's really trying to, just slow down and focus on the basics. And for me, like my top two Gallup strengths are futuristic and ideation, which means I'm always coming up with ideas and dreaming about the future.
Love it.
And sometimes that's not so helpful when things need to be done right now and you need to focus on those basics. So, my advice to people would be, if you're feeling like there's no real purpose to your life, it's just start with the basics. Just slow down, just enjoy the simple things, and then the big things will come in time. And then the second thing that's really helped me, and something else that my success coach has shared with me, is the quote, feel the fear and do it anyway. And that ties to this idea of showing up. That story that I mentioned when I'd first arrived into England and run out of money, and you're trying to do this big thing, and I'm hiding under the sheets, and I'm meant to be at a meeting in 10 minutes at a potential investor. And it's just like, in hindsight, I'm glad that I didn't go, because I think I would have been on the complete wrong direction for my life if that had have all worked out. And that's a part of it too. But, I think now for me, it's still feeling that sense of anxiety and, turning up to deliver workshops to students or speaking at conferences. I had the opportunity to speak at the Torrens University Summit in Adelaide earlier in the year, and at the Love Your Story event last year. I still feel that, deep sense of anxiety and, nausea beforehand. And it's like, how can I get through this? And how I get through it is simply by acknowledging that fear as being normal, because what I'm going to do is important to me. It means something to me, and, maybe it'll mean something to others. And, having given my pain purpose, it's like, okay, I feel this fear, I acknowledge this fear, but that's not going to stop me from doing what I think is important. And I think it's that process of just accepting our feelings and not trying to necessarily change how we're feeling, that's also been really important for me to be able to to live the life that I want and overcome a lot of those demons.
Yeah, so good. I love how you turn your pain into purpose and how you focus on others. That's one way to sort of get out of your own mind and get out into what can I do for others rather than just feeling sorry for yourself. And yeah, I just love everything you said. Everything. Yeah. And there's a very fine line between fear and excitement. Even physiologically, when we are excited, that excitement is very similar to fear in many ways. Yeah, and I think it all depends on the step and how far out of your comfort zone you are stepping. So if, like, when you went to England, for example, that was a very big jump off a cliff, right? But if you had given us a baby step outside that comfort zone and embraced the challenge that was exciting and not scary, that would have turned into something that you could possibly feel more connected and more capable of managing, right? So
I like that.
That's kind of where I that's how I would say to someone who is feeling the fear and wants to do it, is my inner compass always tells me if I'm afraid because that step is too big of a step, or if I'm afraid because I'm so excited and I'm not sure if I can do it, but I feel ready to do it.
Yeah.
So there's a very big difference between you going for a big step, a huge step that is completely outside your comfort zone, and a small step that is exciting and you look forward to, and it's a growth step.
Yeah.
Gradual growth step. So
yeah, I really like that. I was actually thinking about that yesterday when you have that feeling of adrenaline, and it's kind of, in a way, it feels the same as when you're having an anxiety episode, but it's just taking that moment to be like, okay, what actually is this feeling? And that almost that metacognition, it's like stepping back, the third eye, and it's like, what actually is this feeling? What does this mean to me now? And I think that's a really important distinction that you make.
Yeah, exactly. So just something to remember, just a little tip, because you're highly coachable, so it's easy to give you something you can turn into wisdom. But if anyone else is listening, I think that's to me what differentiates a step that is a bit too big than the next reasonable step. The next reasonable step is a step that brings excitement as well as fear. Such a great conversation. Really good conversation, Paul. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
I can't wait to see what else life will bring to you with, finishing your bachelor now and working for Torrance. And I'm sure that there will be so much more. And just keep sharing your value with everybody else. It's very healing, not just to those who are suffering with mental illness, but to anyone who sees you. It's really empowering and healing.
Yeah, I really appreciate the chance to share with your listeners. And the last thing I would say is for everyone just to be kind to themselves now. It's a tough time.
And Paul, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you?
The best bet to get in touch with me would just to visit my blog, which is paulyjames.com. So PAULY James.com. And post there videos, blog content, and my contact details are there as well.
And you're on LinkedIn as well?
Yep. Yeah, Paul Grainger.
Yeah. Paul is an awesome storyteller. I just want to have to say. And also with his ideation being one of his top strengths, and being in what was that we did in the conference that we were in the sprint, the
hackathon.
Yes, the hackathon. Being with him, he's got so many talents. So if anyone listening to this wants to hire a graduate in marketing, what are your plans for marketing wise, Paul?
So I'm really excited to be kind of looking into the ed tech space, so education technology, but really any opportunities that combine entrepreneurship, startups with education and mental health. So, you know, now graduating, for me, it's networking with people who, you know, have those similar interests, and you know, working to create solutions that can help the young people of the future.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Paul, and I look forward to meeting you again soon.
Thank you, Marcia.
The Turnaround Talk Show and Podcast is brought to you by Marcia Tepperman. You can find me on my website, www.marciatepperman.com.au, or you can connect with me on social media via Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to being with you again soon.